This is Men in Labor.
Heavy loader, load it up. Bulldozer, push it out.
Randy Mask, which look, he says he's not a plumber no more, or he got out of the plumbing business. He's in it because your son's in it. You got no choice, right?
Well, no, I'm running the cast iron rehabilitation division of my business. We own 3 businesses.
You
me and
struggled.
my son.
You struggled with that word rehabilitation. Did you see yourself?
Do what now?
Anyway, yeah, I know you got another business. You got a pipe business.
A pipelining business.
Pipelining.
Yes. Yep.
Right, and a jetting business.
Yep. Jetting.
Right. But you got into that after the whole plumbing thing.
Oh yeah, I went into business back in '85, but I got bored of it later in life. I've been around all my life. My son came in, did very well in the business. I actually got pushed into jetting. It was a godsend. My first contract really took off. When you get into jetting, then...
Well, hang on. I'm going to get into the jetting, but I want to hear something before we forget this part, because you said you got bored.
I did. I've been around plumbing all my life since I was 10.
But the game of plumbing is the same, so that it makes boredom. But what about all the people, the crew, the employees, the customers? It never gets boring, does it?
Employees never get boring because they're always a handful. I know it's really become difficult, especially in this area, I think, because the price of living has been going up so much. A lot of these guys moved out of town and whatnot. Yeah. It's like I'm hiring liners out of St. Pete, and they're commuting because it's cheaper to live up there and to come down here to work.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah,
St. Pete. Okay, so you're talking about South St. Pete, probably.
Yeah.
Right? Parish used to be cheaper. So we're talking about Southwest Florida, everyone. I know you know we're from Sarasota, then we talk about Florida, but this is the nitty-gritty of it. Sarasota has got super expensive. And we've been pushing workers out of Sarasota since 08. You know, right before then, 05, people started fleeing because you could have got a house when I moved here for $70,000. That house now, which has never been remodeled, painted, cared for, is dilapidated, is $400,000.
It's nuts. My first house that I built was, I think it was $65,000. I sold it. That was in '85, and I sold that house probably around 2017, 18 for like $280,000.
Which was a deal.
It was a deal
for somebody. Is that microphone pointing at him enough, Donnie?
If I hear him one more time, I'll be able to tell you.
Point that. You know, see how that mic swivels? Just aim it at your face. Yeah. Just aim it right, like you're jetting a pipe, Randy. Like you're sticking a.
There's a lot to this.
Like, man. What is it? It's not a roto-rooter. What the hell do they call it? A snake. Like it's a snake going down your throat. Like a snake going down your throat, Randy. There you go. It's better for us. Well, like he has no clue on how to hold this thing.
Well, this hasn't been his job.
Yeah,
you know what he touches?
Ain't my gig.
Can I tell you the kind of shit that this man holds that he can't hold that? You know, when I had a septic tank back in the day, you know, at the first house, and I think this is before I knew you then because you did my mom's house. You did a repipe over her house with that polybutylene that got recalled. Remember that shit?
I thought we did yours in copper. I was thinking the other day it was one of the last houses that I actually...
My mother's. This is my mother's house on Linwood.
I thought that was your house.
No. I make everything feel like it's mine.
Yeah, you kind of told me it was.
So,
but anyways.
Yeah, I had a septic tank. So I didn't really... You know, I didn't know what a septic tank was, really.
Right.
Because I came from Cleveland. We didn't have septic tanks. But the guy that came, the sanitary sewer guy that came to pump that thing, the first time I ever saw a guy pump a septic tank, I was like,
that's exciting.
Whew, this man don't fear nothing.
No, you can't.
Yeah, I don't know if he had gloves on, to tell you the truth. You know, man. It was an amazing thing. I didn't know the concept of it, right? Until the wall between the solids and the liquids busted down, because that was a 1960 septic tank.
Oh, yeah.
And that wall collapsed inside. Mm-hmm. And the guy's like, we're going to have to replace that wall eventually. He gave me some price. So then my brother-in-law like, we could patch it. right? So we were out there and we dug that thing up, and he got into that septic tank. He put concrete on the top. He fixed the top so it had more of a lip on it, because it has to reach a certain height, and then that liquid comes over the top and goes into the drain field, and the solids stay onto one side of the tank.
Okay.
And by the way, the drain field was solid. It just solidified. It just got hard over time. And we had that thing styrofoam bulleted. Guy came over with styrofoam bullets and shot and broke up the ground. He goes, won't guarantee it's going to work. $800. It worked. But the greatest thing was, I'm looking at my brother-in-law, and he's got these jeans on. They're just covered. He's trying to get them off. He's trying to take these jeans off. He just picks them up, throws them to a trash can, right? Later on that day, when he left, I went back there and I got those jeans. And I hosed them off, made sure they were clean enough to throw in the washing machine, washed them, and then gave them to him for Christmas.
Well, look at you. What a guy. Probably used Tide too, didn't you?
I mean, you don't throw jeans away. Come on, man. But after seeing what these guys went through and what they hold and touch, and is it true, do you think? Do plumbers really get that deep into the shit? Normally? I mean, normally you don't, right?
Well, it depends on what kind of plumber you are. You got new construction plumbers, you got service plumbers. What I'm doing is an entirely specialized field. What you've seen with that septic tank's nothing compared to what we do, because what we take and do is we go up those sewer lines, and these sewer lines are 40, or they're not sewer lines, they're actually called building drains under the building by code definition, and we blow all that stuff out.
How bad does it get?
I'll put it to you this way. You take a typical 2,000 square foot house, 2-bathroom, we get anywhere from 5 to 10 gallons of just
sludge, solid
rust, and buildup and everything in those lines. And
it's the line going to the city or the county.
No, this is the, by building drain, it means it's under the slab of the house.
Oh, really?
Once it comes out of the building, I think it's 5 feet, then it becomes by definition a sewer.
Okay.
So we're basically working on the building drains, and you had to use cast iron in Sarasota until 85. When I moved here in 78, Manatee County was already using PVC underground. Oh. At that time, every county had their little group of local plumbers that would make additions and subtractions from the code that were amendments specific to them. And because of that, every municipality, the codes would change.
Right.
So then in the 90s, they decided to make it a uniform statewide code. That's what they did. And that was the evolution of 1.6 gallon flush toilets. And that was a real problem starting out because none of the toilets flushed. And originally, the plumbers that had made the amendments felt bigger was better, so you had to run a 4-inch to every toilet. Those systems were designed for 3.5 to 7 gallon flush toilets. So then they take and come out with these 1.5 gallon flush toilets. So the utility department says, oh, we're going to do everybody a favor. Yank your 3.5s and more out. We'll give you a rebate to put in 1.6. They killed all those people because there wasn't enough water in those dirty lines. And when they did all this transition with the technology of 1.5 gallon flush toilets, there was only one company that could figure out how to make them work. It was a Japanese company called Toto.
Oh, yeah.
But it was all American made. And they figured out.
Toto was all American made.
It was, yeah, they had, actually, when they came into business, they grabbed every plumber in town and flew them into Atlanta up to their plants. I had no interest, but I finally went. When I went up there, they had an old Briggs plant, which was a building there in Atlanta that was built back during the Civil War. That was all manually made toilets. And they were pouring the slip, this, that, and the other. They would dry. And they had so many defective toilets. As we're walking through there, I was with a buddy of mine, another plumber, and I'd say, man, we're getting a pretty good deal on these toilets. Look at all these toilets that, they're rejecting, and they would just throw into like this wet slip container, and it was just mud at that point. So I don't know if they reprocessed it or what, but they were very picky about that. Now, that building was built back during the Civil War, as they said. It was kind of neat, had a lot of history to it. And then they took us to their new robotic plant. That was unbelievable.
What year was this?
This was like in the 90s.
So they had robotic toilet plants in the 90s.
Yeah, it was like crazy. They had these robo arms, which we've all seen a little bit of robotic stuff at this point. But back then, they were painting the toilets, moving the toilets, everything robotically. And they took in, it was kind of a tour type of thing they do to promote their product. Right. So they had multiple toilets set up there of different designs. And they went on to say, being the Japanese, that they had created a product that was very, very similar. It mimicked human waste.
Huh.
And they would weigh it. And he took a ball. If I remember correctly, it was probably just
so they made fake crap.
They made
to
fake
test
crap
the toilets because they didn't have
toilets.
enough people in the factory producing
I don't
naturally.
know, they really wanted to go back and taste test them, so they kind of went with
no
the fake
taste.
thing. It probably had
There's
a
no
fruity,
taste
it
test.
probably
It's
had a
all-
fruity taste.
The toilets don't taste nothing. It's all flush testing.
Exactly.
You know that?
Yeah. So they would take and hit these other manufacturers' toilets, and they would just stop up. It got to the point where they would take, even if you remember as a kid, we used to have those little plastic army men.
Yeah.
They would actually throw those in their toilet and flush it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting. When they decided to make the opening bigger, they made a ball. It was like a golf ball.
Yeah.
And they sent this ball to all these plumbers. And they would do these home builders shows. And because they had the patent on that, all the competitive manufacturers would be down there with their toilets and stuff. And here would come the Toto guy.
Yeah.
And he'd pull out his 2-inch ball.
Wow.
And they go, uh-oh.
It's tester.
Yeah. And it would stop it up. And when it did, it'd tell it, come on down, let me show you this. So it was really wild the way they did that. Well, the patents ran out and everything, and everybody's on board. And the technology
Hang on,
changed.
because this is a good story, but I have to break this up a little bit here.
I'm done.
The Toto, no, you're not done. The Toto toilet itself, right? I remember them testing with hot dogs. Like they had a 9 hot dog test. They would throw 9 hot dogs, or I think it was 9. It was something like, because they used to show this video in class. And they would flush these hot dogs down the toilet, and no problem. These friggin' hot dogs, right? Which I guess is too much money to spend on. You'd rather make fake poop. But the fake crap that they're making at the factory, how did they know, what was the recipe? That's what I want to know.
I'm not a real questions kind of guy.
I want to see that.
I'm just saying, because what if they put the wrong chemical in the consistency of this fake?
All I can tell you
and then it's not going to flush. But if you there's horses everywhere. Why couldn't they go? Unbelievable that
don't wanna handle
this is
the real
throwing me
stuff.
this is throwing me that there's a factory making fake crap for testing purposes when there's so much available.
Crap, apparently.
So you went to these,
But it was brown and had corn in it. It looked like fake corn.
Are
I
you
don't know.
lying?
I didn't taste it.
They didn't do that.
I didn't taste it. I just
see, this is the
watched
plumber's
it
joke.
flush.
The plumber will come back to tasting it. I tried to get him off of that. He won't say.
You were leading him right back with the cookbook.
I'm leading him back toward it and hoping that he can understand this little gap, this little bridge I'm trying to make from why are they doing this? I get it for the testing purposes. The Toto company, he's throwing me off on several things. Toto, Japanese company. None of the toilets are made in Japan. I thought they were made in Japan because I did a gig for them in Seattle, and that was the port. They were bringing those toilets in. But if you're saying they're making them in some other part.
Well, they told us that they were making them, and we seen them making them. Now,
wait, now that's another thing that you kind of threw me on here. So you saw them making handmade toilets.
Oh yeah,
they're pouring it into a mold, and they're so defective that they're dumping these toilets. You said into a mud.
Well, occasionally, they had so many blim toilets.
But what's a mud?
Well, if you know anything about ceramics,
a mud ceramic.
Yeah, I mean, a toilet is China.
To remelt it.
Huh?
To remelt it?
Well, ceramics is made like a mud.
Yeah.
And you take and cast it into something, it dries, you glaze it, and you fire it, or you fire it, you glaze. I don't remember exactly what the process was. My mother did do ceramics. I do know a little bit about that. But it was all along that process.
Right.
But their low-end toilets, they were doing in the old Briggs plant. And it was where they actually had like I guess they were plaster of Paris molds, and they would take this liquid mud, they would pour it into it, and it sets for so long. They put rubber bands around it. It sets so long, and then after it sets, they take the rubber bands off. They break the mold in two, and then your product's there.
That's how long it took.
Huh?
That's a long process for a toilet.
I don't know how long, to be honest with you, that they set after they poured them. It was...
I mean, the process. I can't imagine that's the same process today.
They were using the...
It must be manufactured with all machines now.
I don't know what the other manufacturers, what their process was in making these toilets.
When's the last time you did a toilet tour?
Was then.
The 90s.
Was in the 90s at Toto. Now, I will say that as a kid, there was a shortage back in the 70s because I had been around plumbing since I was 10. My uncle owned a supply house and a plumbing shop and a cabinet shop. And pretty certain it was the 70s. It got to where you could not find a toilet nowhere in the United States.
Really?
We had, when and you know how shortages go, I think a lot of it's intentional.
I'm just thinking of the toilet paper shortage during COVID and the run on toilet paper. Could you imagine a run on toilets?
There was houses sitting everywhere back in the 70s, I believe, was the era that you could not get toilets. And with
so you were rich if you had a toilet in the 70s. I never had that perspective.
Yeah, you didn't know about the shortage?
No, I was a child.
Well, it got so bad.
Using toilets, not...
We were located in Northern Virginia. I think it was an Eljay plant was up somewhere in Pennsylvania, and somehow they made a deal with, I'm pretty certain it was Eljay. They made a deal with Eljay that if we came up with our supply truck, they would load it. Me and my dad drove up there. I was just like 10 or 11.
Making a toilet run.
Yep.
From what city to what city?
We went from Northern Virginia, Manassas,
okay,
up into Pittsburgh. I don't know if it was Pittsburgh. It was somewhere in Pennsylvania.
About 4 hours, right?
It was something like that. Like I said, that was a long time ago. I've done a lot of shit between.
I mean, do you do that down here? You don't have to. You've never done a run to Miami and brought that product.
Well,
back
we've never had a toilet shortage.
I'm just saying with other products. You never went to Miami, picked up a product and brought it and distributed it.
Specialty pipe, valve.
Oh,
There's been a lot of distribution of products in Florida, if you know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, but sometimes there's something special you may take in need, and we got to go get it.
Right,
especially
you got to go get
work.
it. Sometimes it comes into a boat, they drop it off at the port. Donnie doesn't.
I know.
Donnie's. I'm trying to get Donnie to get on board. He's not sure what he's talking about. What I'm talking about. All right, so you ran from Manassas to Pittsburgh area to pick up as many toilets as you could put in a truck.
Yeah, it was like a
pickup truck?
No, it was a 20-foot flatbed.
So your dad had a plumbing business.
Well, he was working for my uncle.
Your uncle had the business.
Yeah. Like I said, my uncle...
They're not partners.
No, my uncle owned a plumbing business, a plumbing business, a plumbing supply house, and a cabinet shop. My dad had been in the military, and he retired. And at that point... my uncle had told my dad, come to work for me. So my dad went to work for him, straight out of the military after 23 years. Nobody knew that it was his brother-in-law there. And quickly, he obtained his plumbing license and everything. But it got to where the stress was so bad, the plumbing business, and the plumbing business is a very stressful business. I've seen it take a lot of people down. In fact, I actually read an article just the other day that it said that between 90 to 95% of plumbers that go into business, they go out of business in a very short period of time.
What is the problem, Randy, with the stress in the plumbing business? Is it too many customers? Is it you're making decent? Let's just say if you make decent money, right? I'm assuming plumbers now today for sure make good money, but is it because you took on too much?
No, it's the whole thing. Employees, workload, mistakes that employees make, liabilities that come back on you. You know, there's a lot of liability, especially anymore, you know as well as I do. Nobody wants to take responsibility for anything, and they want to take and tag whoever they can.
Yeah.
You know, to... to deal with it. So yeah, there's a lot of
It's
stress.
business in general.
Yeah, especially, like myself, I started out with nothing, and I worked, and I had, a lot of downturns in the period of time, but I always refer to it as wrestling a bull. Some days the bull would have you down and the horn in your side, and some days you'd ride the bull. But
Right. It's nice when
you
you're
just
up there.
couldn't let go of the bull because
It's fun.
that was
It's fun.
what we were there for,
Yeah. So your dad
challenge.
and your uncle brought you into the business, kind of.
Well, I was, the nephew. So my dad told my uncle, he says,
You're how old at this time?
I was about 10. We just
10?
Yeah, we just come back from Hawaii.
This is illegal. Go ahead.
Well, I just hang out there, so it wasn't nothing.
We all did it.
Yeah,
At that point, we're a little-
don't be bringing my uncle in. He's dead.
We all did that. At 10, which no one believes, by the way. People don't believe that, right? If you tell me you were in business working full-time as a plumber at 10, not full-time, but you were working after school, that's 5th grade.
No, I wasn't doing that at 10. I was just around the shop and I observed these different
You didn't do any
things.
work.
No, not really. But like when my dad was a plumber, I'd
You're
go
right.
out on the job with him and, checking jobs and stuff. And
Yeah.
then when my dad says, I can't deal with this plumbing business anymore, to my uncle. He said, I'll go down the road, not a problem. And because he felt that because coming out of the military, it was such a difference. And he took on something that, because I guess the military is not all that stressful and everything. And
What?
he got into the real world,
Well, the military is structured.
I was
If you're
very
in the
structured.
military,
And
right?
I guess what I'm saying is it was an entirely different world for him.
Right. You weren't kidding. You're actually being serious. That the military was easier than being in the plumbing
Oh,
business.
yeah. He was an
That's
engineer.
individually, because when you think about it, the truth is that when you're being told what to do, just like an employee, it's much easier to be in that role than to be the leader
Oh, yeah.
or someone who's actually self-employed person in America, small business that's not a major corporation that doesn't have any like eye to the government or any leads to the government. You're on your own. Like when you reach a certain status, then government kind of protects you in a certain way. But when you're small, 1 man, 2 man, even under probably 50 employees, very small business, that is probably the hardest job to ever take on in this country or any other, because of the stress of doing every role, every hat has to be worn by the owner of that business, because there is not enough to go around to make that business profitable by hiring the marketing guy or hiring the third work person when you have only 2, or buying all the supplies. You have to
That's where
suffer
you need the
somewhere.
working capital to help you out.
You have to suffer unless you have money. Profit solves everything. I know that, because money always solves everything. Once you make enough, then you can pay those people to take care of things.
Yep.
Military and these government, by the way, because I have people that my brother-in-law actually went into a military contractor position, and he never had to worry again. He was happy. He gave up a carpenter job because it was too hard. The workers' comp, trying to get customers, the rest of it. And he was happy being told what to do for a check. It's not easy. So your father leaves. Your uncle stays in it.
No. My uncle says, why don't you come over to the supply house and work?
Ah, okay.
So my dad goes over there. Well, just so happened my dad, we had been stationed with another family. It started years before that. When I was born in Maine, we were associated with this family. And when my dad went to his next destination, which ended up being Hawaii, these people also were coming to Hawaii with us. We had to stop in Oklahoma for about 6 months while they went to flight school. Then we came into Hawaii. My dad only had a 3-year gig in Hawaii, and he was retiring.
Nice.
The other man had a 4-year gig. And in the process of my dad retiring and dealing with my uncle and everything, and he finally, when he decided he wanted out of the plumbing business, he referred my uncle to Dave, which was this other guy that my dad had been in the military with. So with that, he come to work for my uncle, and my uncle quickly sold the plumbing business to him. It turned him into a really bad position.
Your uncle?
No,
Or this other guy.
the other guy that took this plumbing business.
He-
It wore on him so bad.
It got it to him.
Yeah, and the stealing and everything that was happening within the company and whatnot was a real problem. So with that, my dad was away from that. My uncle was away from that business. And then my dad got in there and really excelled with this warehousing. So with that, my uncle had my dad move to different locations and open up branches. So we were in Southern Maryland at that time. His first branch was to be in Manassas, Virginia. My dad went over there and opened that up for him, and that did well. They turned that over to a manager, and then my dad moved on to another business my uncle had bought up around the Baltimore area. Mm-hmm. It was a failing supply business.
So he became a supplier.
Well, my dad went around and well, it was plumbing supplies.
But they weren't doing any more plumbing.
No, it was strictly a wholesale plumbing warehouse.
Right. Okay.
So, with that was kind of how I got brought into it. I didn't want to be a plumber.
You came from Hawaii.
Yep.
Now you're with your dad. You're at a supply.
In Southern Maryland.
You're a supply house now. And now, how old are you there?
When we were in Southern Maryland, we stayed there 2 or 3 years, I guess. I ended up.
You're 12.
I'm thinking when I got to Northern Virginia, I was just a freshman in high school at that point.
Okay.
So I was in Southern Maryland for 4 or 5 years, something like that. And then we moved to Northern Virginia.
So this military family thing was making you move all over the place.
Well, not so much because
You got Hawaii.
Yeah, well, I was only there for 2 of my dad's station places. You know, he'd been in for 23 years. He'd been stationed in Roswell, New Mexico.
You weren't with him.
No, I wasn't born yet. Thule, Greenland. He was in Thule, Greenland for the longest time. Actually, he was in the Navy for, this is kind of a funny story. I don't know if it pertains to your thing here.
We'll keep it simple because I'm more interested. This is all about you.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out where you're coming from because you're coming from a plumbing family. That's what I'm saying. You're coming from a lot of guys start off that way in construction. Mm-hmm. You know, my family, same thing, right? Everybody's in construction. My father tries to break away. He doesn't do really well with the other business. He's trying to become an attorney, and he kind of blows his life. He buys a pizza place, a bar. He's just not happy with what he's doing. So I kind of saw all that shit. He was in the military. I was born in Berlin, so I mean, it was like this kind of.
Yes,
it's not a straight line in my life either. So it's this kind of where are we going all the time? All these questions.
Well, it's a hardship as a child because you're always being taken from.
You don't know what's going on.
Yeah, you're always being put into new schools,
and you also think that's normal because you're not. There's no one to talk to about it. Your sisters are going through it, or whoever you have in your family. So for me, it wasn't a straight line. And then I would see the straight lines. I would see the construction family, my cousins, and what they did and their trajectory, and that was kind of appealing to me. I go, oh, this is how you do it. So when we did have a moment of settling in, then I was gravitating toward, well, I'd like to drive a brand new Riviera too. Mm-hmm. I'd like to live in a white brick mansion too. I'd like to have 12 racehorses too. You know, those types of things. So whatever that guy said, who was my uncle, I did. If he wanted me to work for him, whatever job it was, didn't question it. Me and his 2 sons, that's what we did. And then I actually left because of another fucking branch coming off the tree that was not expected. But then I tried to straighten myself back up, went back to it 7 years later, got back into the construction industry with them, and watched that trajectory again. So everybody has their own way of getting into these things until they can make decisions on their own. So that's what I'm saying with you. I'm more interested in how do guys end up where they're at, right? Did you choose what you wanted? Was it a long period of, I don't know what to do, I'm following everybody else right now? But at some point you have a son too, which is interesting because he tried to break away from the plumbing industry.
No.
And now he's back.
No, he was always involved in baseball.
He was baseball. That's what I'm saying. He never wanted to be.
Yeah, he didn't have the interest or anything.
He didn't want to be a plumber. He wanted to be a baseball player.
Yeah, that was.
And you gave him the opportunity. I don't know if he understands or if you guys talk about that, but I think it's true. I don't know the exact story, but I think when a father is successful, like Now I am. My father was not successful. I'm a successful father. I gave my kids the opportunity to pick, what do you want to do?
Well, I didn't want my son to get into plumbing.
Right. Well, he didn't either. He wanted to play baseball.
Well, he did up to a certain point. He finally signed with the Rangers, and he was in the farm leagues. And it was a big transition because when he played with Texas Tech, I would always fly up in there to Texas and watch his games.
Yeah.
And it was like pro. You would go in the locker rooms. It was unbelievable. Like, they had a regional game in Georgia. They had a private chartered plane that was catered the whole way in. So then once he signed, he ended up like in Babe Ruth again. They ended up in host housing.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't even have their own place. They were staying with people that lived in the community.
The glamorous
They were
life
getting $800 a month, and they played ball every day. And he...
Almost like the military.
Yeah, he always had the thing about consciousness about his height and whatnot, this, that, and the other. But the thing about it was at Tech, he was doing a great job.
Yeah, and I'm not saying anything except you gave him the leeway for that. This boy wasn't brought up like you were.
No.
My kids weren't brought up like I was. You know, you have to have at least one line of successful parents to figure out the shit, go through it, and kind of come out clean. That has a kid, and then you can give that kid the opportunity. Now, my kids can give their kids, if they choose, a great opportunity to do whatever they want. So getting into plumbing for you, I don't know, was it a vocation that you wanted to do? Was it convenient? Was it there? It was in your face? Why did you choose it?
My big dream was, at the time, back in the 60s, was drive a tractor trailer. I like big things, big equipment, and stuff like that. And I'd always question my dad, you know, what should I do? What should I do, you know? What do you think about, you know, tractor trailer driving? They make a good living. My dad's like, oh, yeah, everybody makes a good living, you know. And so with it, I ended up started driving dump trucks in the Manassas area. And it wasn't glorified. You get on site, and you would end up having with like 50, 75 loads a day, just back and forth. And I want to do long distance stuff. So I ended up going to work for another guy. And interesting enough, he was a retired major out of the military. He was running these 3 dump trucks. And he told me then, he says, Randy, he says, you're not a truck driver. He said, truck drivers, they're people with problems. He said, you know, they can go out on the road for weeks at a time. They come home, things get hot, they hop in the truck, see ya, I'm out of here, you know. So with that, I finally figured out, well, I guess I'll be a plumber. So then I got into plumbing, actually hands-on doing plumbing.
Just straight right to plumbing.
Yeah. And I did drive the supply trucks and stuff for my uncle and everything. I got away from that. I moved on to the bigger things, the dumb trucks, this, that, and the other. And but then I was kind of like, this driving ain't the greatest. I'll just go back into plumbing. And I did. And I enjoyed plumbing at that time. But after a while, it started taking a toll. But the interesting thing is this. It always bothered me because my son really showed no interest. And I'm like, you know, I really built something up here that I wanted to give to somebody. Oh. Well, he called me up and he says, you know, Dad, he says, I'm tired of them jacking me around because when you get into the farm leagues like that, they have multiple leagues. And they would come to him and say, oh, so-and-so out in Bakerfield, he'd be in like Phoenix or something like that. Surprised, because that was a big, one of the big areas for training and baseball and major leagues and all that. And they would say, well, you got to be in Bakersfield tomorrow. He said, they don't even take you to the airport or anything, Dad. It's all on you. And he said, I'm tired of it. I said, well, you know, I like to see, make it through it, but if that's what you want to do, come on. Yeah. He came home and he went to work for me. And I had a service manager. He come to me and I was having some difficulties at that time. And he says, you know, I heard you had some difficulties. What can I do to help you? I said, here's what you can do for me, Frank. I said, take this son of mine and teach him plumbing. So he took him out under his arm. And he taught Michael plumbing. Michael did very well with it, not to be around construction or anything. Mm-hmm. And with a short period of time, he ended up running the whole service department. Okay. And with that, the family started coming back into the business, and I got into this jetting thing, and I'm like wanting to show him a better way of making a living profit-wise and everything else. Because the problem with the plumbing business in this area, all it takes $4,000 to become a plumber. you go take the course, $2,500. Another $2,500, you go buy you a beat up van. That's how I got going. I had a beat up van, $300 in the damn bank account, and I took off. And it took off well.
That's right. Look at you now. So why is that a problem?
I've had my ups and downs, believe me.
But why is that a problem?
Why is it a problem?
Because that's how you started.
Well, I'll tell you why it was a problem.
You wanted to be harder now.
So when my son,
I don't blame you because of competition. I say this in class sometimes when I say to the guys, should it be harder to get the license to be a plumber? And guys, of course, because they have their license, go, hell yeah, because there's a lot. It's same with comedy, Randy.
Oh yeah, well it filters them out.
The competition's much heavier, but you have an advantage because you've built a company a good company over what 40 years now.
Yeah, I went in business in '85.
So you have an advantage, even though there's new plumbers coming in. Why do I want the new guy if I can get Randy, who has experience? I'm paying you for your experience, not that $140. I think I'm paying you. Should I? $40 an hour. Is that what I'm getting now? Anyway, it's 100 and some. It's a lot of money, right?
Well, actually,
you're charging a decent amount of money, but the reason I always say, and I agree with this, I'm paying the guy for his experience. He's seen it all.
Oh yeah, that's what people don't understand.
It takes him less time than the new guy.
Yep.
The new guy might be 40, not even, right? They're still charging $80 an hour, probably, right? But he might take 2 hours. That's 160. You might charge 120, but it takes you an hour.
It's a very good point of what you just said. Because that's the truth. Because if you go into a person's house, and let's say it's something simple, you go in, boom, boom, and, $125. They're like, we'll use on here for a few minutes. But the thing about it is, it's the 40 years of experience that guy brought in there.
It's your eyes.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with if you
they
ever
don't get that.
Has the bank ever called you to have you sit down with them so they can manage your money? Have you ever gotten a call from a banker? So we'd like to manage your money?
No, but I had a whole bunch of them want my accounts.
Right. And here's the thing. Sometimes that'll happen. And you get there, and it's some kid that's under 30, and he's driving a car that's 12 years old. And there's no offense to you, kid, but I'm way older than you. I've seen a lot more than you. You haven't seen nowhere near as much as the senior banker in this room. Why am I getting you? I can't go with you. I need somebody who's seen the situations. I need someone who's been there during the 2008 recession. I need to know the feelings of those people, not just the numbers on paper. And what actually happened in a town like this, when the recession hit here, and we had some of the most beautiful stores, some of the most, I won't name names, but the high-end retail had plywood on the windows. And there were houses that were in mid-construction that just sat empty until thieves came in and ripped all the copper out of it. I need that. I need the guidance of someone with experience. I've learned that now because I have experience. So I don't want a plumber or a plumbing company that hasn't been in business in a while. You have a name in this town.
Oh, yeah.
So these guys
it surprisingly a pretty good reputation when I look back on it.
Even Jeff, who was just here, says, Randy Mask, yeah, absolutely. I know who he is. Good plumber, knows he's great business. But you came from me because of that early on, right?
Well, I had a good continuing education
teacher. That's right.
Also.
I know you're against that shit, so we don't get involved in that.
The guy that always made me wait till last to get my certificate.
Yeah, because you and Danny were trouble. You had a little.
No, Danny was.
You had a
was
little partner that came in. You guys caused shit in class. I have to go get you.
It wasn't like that.
I said, you know what? Why am I having classes in Biloxi? That's a big mistake. But anyway, you guys.
You killed it that night, man. You didn't even call me.
I always have good classes in Biloxi.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thing too with that business that I'm in, which is, dealing with contractors, dealing with blue collar people. That's why I'm doing the podcast, because for me, and I said this in class 1,000 times, I probably couldn't do this for the white collar industry. I'm just not capable of. I can talk to them, but I can't listen to them. I don't like pomposity. I don't like the competition talk where I got this. What do you have? I can't deal with that. I've always been a broke kid, and I still feel like I'm a broke kid. And I like people who stay in their roots, not get too high up into the weeds. You know what I mean?
Well, that's something I've always tried to do. Not that I'm one of the big players.
You're a big player.
But I'm not. And I don't take monetary things as,
Your name is super credible, which is hard to do. as a beginner. Your reputation is not 5 years of experience; it's 40 years plus. It's the ability of you being in a town that's grown, and so you know all the players that are in this town.
That's one of the things that I have going for me, because the codes have changed so much since '78, and the materials have changed. We were doing cast iron with lead.
Yep.
We were copper, soldering. Today, nobody out there knows anything about cast iron. I can go on a job and I can tell you specific what the codes were.
Yeah.
I put that cast iron in. But back to what you were questioning me with my son and everything, I finally brought him in and I said, what do you want to do? He says, I want to do what you do. I said, no, you don't. I said, you don't seem to understand. Your whole life, it's looked glorified. You've always had everything you ever wanted. As he played sports, back then a bat was $120 and it was a lot of money. But I always made sure that he had everything that he needed to do what it was his goals were set for.
Yeah.
So at that time, I said, Michael, you don't understand, because it looks glorified from where you're at. We've always done well in your eyes. I said, but it's a 24-hour marriage all day, every day. And it's very stressful. And him, unlike me, he had the gift of gab. He could talk to a 2x4 and make it laugh. And with that, I said, you need to get in the insurance business. And he said, no.
Oh, God, how could you?
It's good money to be made there. I'd already talked to a guy trying to get my kid into this. Nope, he wanted to do this. And he came in and actually, he blew me away, because he ended up getting his master plumber's license at a younger age than I did. And I grew up in the plumbing industry. He was able to take and comprehend books and everything else. Me, I wasn't the best student, dropped out of high school. Everything I learned was from the School of Hard Knocks that I paid for.
Definitely.
So with that, he really took this business off.
There's two groups of people, right? There's the people that went to college for construction, and the people who started from scratch on day one on the job. Mm-hmm. That is, I don't think people talk about that as much, or people question that as much. Most people actually think that most contractors did not go to college. But when you start looking at those plumbing books, you start looking at the code, you start looking at a set of blueprints, you're going to have some education.
Oh, yeah.
And people just
you
don't realize
yourself
that.
as you go along for the industry that you're...
And my son went to Rinker. He went to the construction management program. Didn't do much in the field. I mean, he worked every summer with Maglick. He worked with Jeff Charlotte. He worked with Willis Smith. He worked for Ajax.
He worked for some good companies.
He worked for all good companies, because we know everybody in the business. And I would tell the classes, as my son, he would come to class. I said, here's my little boy. He's 9. We're getting him ready. And I didn't know.
They hired him just to get the certificate early, and that's why I had to wait till last. But anyways, go ahead.
And look, I'll take whatever I can get. But I didn't think he actually wanted to be in construction. He wanted to be a veterinarian. And I said, fine. Right? Just like your son wanted to be in baseball. My daughter was going to be in fashion. My middle one wanted to be a photographer. None of them do those things. So it's the pipe dreams that you want to have. Can you fulfill it? Well, you have the opportunity. Now it's up to you, right? It's easy to say those things. But now this is up to you. And you're talking about highly competitive careers, just like stand-up comedy. So can you at least clean for your kids the path, so they don't have to worry? Like, you're giving them the $120 baseball bat. By the time my kid played baseball, they were $250, by the way. And the salesman would try to talk me into a higher bat. He goes, we have a bat for $500. I go, he hasn't got hit all year off the $200 bat. I go, I'm the only founder at the end of the game cheering for him behind the backstop, clapping to pray that he has a strikeout. There's now one mark on the bat. It's going back to the store. Don't get a hit tonight, right? Because the bat, and the kids are more, I use the word spoiled. I think it's the right word. They were all coming to the baseball fields in Lexuses. They were being driven by their mothers in high-end vehicles around here. They all had their own equipment. No one shared a bat. No one shared a mask. No one shared a glove. That's what we all did. There was no, you didn't have your own bat playing baseball when you were a kid in the 70s, 80s. These kids today have every opportunity. And Florida always has scouts. They're always looking at the high schools. They're always around here looking for kids. There's always, but it is a highly competitive career, and you have to put up with this shit. If they want you in Bakersfield tomorrow and they're not going to get you there, you got to show up. In stand up, they do the same shit. You want this gig? They're not asking how do you feel, unless you're friggin' Eddie Murphy or some major star right off the bat. You know, Mark McGwire, somebody, right? Someone incomparable in baseball. I mean, I know he did a few steroids, but I'm saying McGwire, those types of people, the stars always get that treatment, right? There's no glorification of anything, like you say. The plumbing business is not I don't think anyone's ever glorified plumbing.
No.
I'm sure there was I used to joke about there should be like an MTV Cribs. I don't know if you remember that show where they used to show the homes of these amazing. I said that should be for contractors too. There's contractors that are living in these homes.
Oh yeah.
These 3-story with elevators on the bay homes because of how well they did. They're not showing the kids those homes. They're showing, here's the pipe dream people, the singers and the comedians and the entertainment industry who've made it, the 1% of 1% who have made it in this business. But there's a whole other path that you can take if you would like to achieve the end result, which all of us want: a nice house, a nice car, and to be able to pay for our kids, to make it through the shit without suffering from 0 to 18, that jagged path that I went through, that you went through, you know, where a lot of kids went through, where your life, I thought everybody was doing that. Thank God there's people have made it through those paths straight lined, that led examples of how this is how life could be. And that's what you aspire to be. So your son, really, amazingly, no matter what happened in plumbing, no matter what you had to go through, you've now allowed the next generation to, and he'll let his kids, if he has any. Yeah, you said there's grandkids, right?
Yeah.
He'll let his kids be able to even have even higher mountains to look from.
Well, that's funny because
Please write that down. That was amazing what I just said.
We'll get that printed on a T-shirt. For
the
you.
story of the story that I built my business on was with my child, because he was my only child. Nobody ever left me anything. There wasn't no money in my family or anything like that. And we lived good and everything, but, you know, there wasn't no money to be given to me or anything, and I didn't expect it from nobody. And with that, my son, I always wanted to be able to give him something.
Yeah.
And when he did come into the business, and he did, you know, adapt very well to it, he enjoyed it and everything, figured, great, I got something to give him. Well, then when, a little bit later, I got a call, and it was to deal with cast iron rehabilitation. I didn't get a call, I got an email. And I'm like, I'm not set up for it. I just totally ignored it. A year later, I get another email from the same lady, same question. I'm like, well, let me call this lady up. So I called her up. And it was a government job up in Tampa. And she says, we have all these units, we need to get hydrojetted, and I can't get nobody to bid this. I said, really? Light bulb kind of came on. I said, well, have you got the videos? Typically, when you're dealing with existing pipes under the floor, you go in with special cameras and video everything. She goes, yeah. She says, I'll send you those videos. She sent me the videos. And I hit the number right, and I started making calls, and I was able to buy a jetter really quick, which was hard because they just had a wet show, which is a national show they have up in Indy every year, and everybody's up there with their products. They sold all their products. Nobody had any spare jetters around, so I got with one company. He got one built for me in the time frame I needed. I went in there and I did that job. Surprisingly, I paid for that machine within about 2 months.
Wow.
So that opened the door.
So you knew how to operate this machine?
No,
or you had to learn?
Well, one of the guys that worked for me been on me to buy one.
Oh, he knew.
Yeah, and I'm like, I just can't bring myself to go and buy a $60,000, $70,000 machine, and I don't have work setting for it.
Make sure that microphone's close to you.
So with that,
so the machine was expensive. That was the gate.
Yeah. So then when you take and start jetting lines, you run into busted cast iron. So the next step to deal with this is to put liners up in it.
Right.
I didn't want to do liners. I reached out to a local guy, and they're like, oh, yeah, we'll work with you, this, that, and the other. Well, come to find out, there really wasn't offering me any special deal because of the fact I was bringing all of my, failing systems to them to line.
Right.
Well, I've always been the type that I always try to put back into my business. And I'm a bit of a hardhead, as you may know, may not.
Really?
I'm like, the hell with y'all. Y'all don't want to share your stuff? I go buy my own shit. So I went out and I bought a lining trailer. Well, little did I know what's involved in lining. It's nothing like plumbing, but it takes a lot of money to get into it. And my thought in getting into it was this. I knew that there was money to be made in it, and that you could take and hire your employees, and you could get prime employees that want to work for higher wages. And it's been a little difficult, but I will say, so when I opened that business,
that's a machine also.
it's a whole another thing. It cost me like $250,000 to get into it. Mm-hmm. But at that time, I had the funds. Randy Mass Plumbing could back all of that.
Right.
So I made the step, and I bought the machine, the system and everything. And we really did well. But then I started
This lining machine lays out, is it a melted
No.
plastic? How's this line it?
It's something that's new out. A lot of the public is getting a little bit familiar with it, but they don't understand it completely. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I'm really good at is I try to break it down and get them to totally understand what's going on. And I've had people take and tell me, you've been on the phone with me for 45 minutes and you don't have a contract with me or anything.
God,
Everybody else that I've talked to won't even talk to me unless I got a contract.
They appreciate so little now, don't they? Just a human voice to talk to for 45 minutes.
And I said, you know what, buddy? I said, I like talking about this. I said, if you want to talk about it, I'll talk all day long. I said, you got to understand what's going on. I said, whether you use me or not. And he's like, these other guys wouldn't even talk to me.
Yeah.
I ended up with a job and everything else. Well, going back to what my strategies were in my life and what I would have at the end would be, I want everybody to have something. So when I opened this business up, well, we had Randy Mass Plumbing. When my son got on board, we decided to get in the gas business. And he's like, let's get in the gas business. We'll separate license. I said, you know what? I don't like school. I've got all the license. You step up, you go get a license.
Right.
He went out and got the gas license. We opened M&M Gas. So now we got Randy Mass Plumbing, M&M Gas. So when I got into the jetting business, I'm like, what am I going to name this? Plumbers, and in a lot of cases, we work for other plumbers because we do something that they're not set up to do. So they refer us. Well, don't no plumber want another plumber's name on their job. I've been down that road.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work out. So that's why I always try to name it a different name. So with that, I'm like, well, what can I name it? I got 2 grandkids. One's name is Colton. One's name is Bo. I said, I'm going to name it Kobo. And if down the road they decide they want to work with their hands, Grampy's left them a business.
Setting them up.
I've given my son half of my business at this point in time. And I will say that back in 15, I hit a really low spot with the economy. I found out I had cancer. I ended up in bad depression.
Yeah. You didn't call me, though.
Huh? No, I didn't call you. It wasn't really nothing to laugh about.
Actually, yes, there's always something to laugh about. By the way, you did call me.
You did call you?
Yeah.
Were you trying to make me out to be a liar?
You sat in my garage.
Did I cry? A weep?
No. What I'm saying is that I've known all of your history, even with your ups and downs. Look, I think about you. I don't know if you know this.
I mean, you go way back, Carmen.
I think about you.
Way back.
When I think about the guys that I've had coming through my system for the last 25 years, you're always in the top. You're always in the top because you were a ball buster from the beginning, right from the beginning.
I've always been that way.
Right from the beginning. And we were all young at that time. We were all much younger, and it was a lot bigger of a party back then. And but you kept a business together through every friggin' bump, whether it was that cancer or whether it was that '08 recession. I mean, I remember you told me you had laid a shitload of money into the economy prior to '08 because we were riding it high around here, and you You're buying a lot of stuff. You put all you were making money from construction, but then you put all your money into construction related products. That's all eggs in one basket kind of thing.
And I did.
And if
I'm a gambling man though.
if it would have hit, right? If the number would have been the right number and rolled the right number, you would have fucking went sky high. But it just happened to roll 7, and everybody crapped out instantly in 08, 09, and the whole area got depressed. But I saw everybody through the depression still, because you had to still, the blessing of continuing education is that you had to show up at my school, no matter if you're making money or not, keep that license. And for me, I didn't suffer as much as everybody else. I mean, I had money in the markets and all that shit, but I didn't suffer business-wise. When you were losing customers, I still had my core group of contractors. But that whole thing that's when laughter look, we did a lot of stuff during that time to make contractors laugh. I not only during the classes, right, to make everybody, they would say to me, this is a relief from the shit that I'm going through.
It was.
And then I had the
But did your classes drop? When all of that?
No.
Those guys still,
There was a
whether
few
they were
people
working,
that decided they were going to become something else, but keep no one ever got rid of they were too young still. They were too young. You had guys that went and got other licenses in different states. You had guys that became mayors of different towns. I remember guys were getting political because there was a solid salary as a mayor of a town.
Yeah.
Some guys had enough money, they would just go play baseball. They said, I'm just going fishing. I'm just playing baseball. And a lot of them started separate businesses. I had more businesses pitched to me during that recession time, from indoor fish farms to guys that wanted to go, that styrofoam concrete, the what do they call that?
the
shit?
ice block and all that.
Whatever that shit was called.
The styrofoam
And I
poured.
just saw a job like that, but that's not a very popular way of doing it right now. I don't see it that much. Or is that not true? I don't know.
I don't really know, because I've basically been away from the plumbing for 10 years.
I
I've been
haven't
running
seen
this.
a lot of it. But the whole point was that during that time, I listened to all of your stories, because you would come to my house and we'd sit and bullshit about different things as you were fixing something, because everything was breaking at my house too. But you persevered and never quit none of this shit. You still
Well, that goes back to the bull story. I never let go of the bull. I couldn't let go of it. But I will say,
and I think, Randy, that's because you're from the other school. You're from the school of hard knocks, where you came from the shit.
oh yeah, I mean,
So it's not any worse than you ever had it. You just happened to ride high for a while, but you weren't used to the high life.
no, I mean, I wasn't
used to the high life. If I go backwards a little bit, it doesn't.
I learned when I first went into business, when you first go into business, you make all this money the first year, you start buying toys. And I bought some toys, and I learned that wasn't the way to go.
Yeah.
And with time, I learned that. And back to the situation I had in 15, I was at the point that I ended up depressed also. I didn't care if son came up or not.
Yeah.
I was fortunate to have my son, but he stepped in. Now, I come to the realization at that point in my life, yeah, I've lost everything for the most part, but I got my health. If you got your health, you can always come back and build it back up. And I learned this, that if you looked around, when you think you're down and out, look around, you ain't down and out.
Oh, yeah.
There's too many people, that is in worse shape. And with that, I had my health, and that's what I lived on, and I'm still fortunate enough I still have my health.
So
at
you
this
had
age.
cancer.
Yeah, but hindsight's 20/20. At the time, it was the best cancer you could have.
Prostate or something?
Prostate.
Right.
I had it removed, but going into it, the C word just totally wrecked my head. It just shut me down. And my son was a really big asset at that point in time. And with that being said, then when I got interested into something different, being this jetter and all the high technology, because the reason it costs so much to get into this business is it's very technical to take and work on a pipe that's 100 feet underneath a cast iron slab
That you can't see.
Right. So it takes a lot of fancy stuff and a really special individual that knows how to install this stuff to pull this stuff off.
Right.
And they're fine. Now, I'm seeing that a lot of guys are buying into this. They can't master it, and they're shutting it down. But it is a great business. It's like I'm not even in like the plumbing part anymore. I'm just dealing more with homeowners and cast iron rehabilitation. My son's dealing with all of the actual plumbing, the codes. I'm done with all of that. I've done it for
He's got
years.
the skin for it. You're done. You're done. You did it all. You don't want to do no more. You want other things.
Yep.
That's the progression of this. When you keep talking about Michael, your son, I keep thinking these are things that you have to trust in, right? That you don't know when you're gonna need things. Like you said, your son came back and you needed him at that time. Mm-hmm. Amazingly, these are things that happen to us. We plan to have things in our life. We're not sure why we need them sometimes, but later on we find out that it's a good thing that the lady called you. You blew off her call, right, to do the jetting or whatever that was, the piping. What did she ask you to do? The jetting?
Jetting.
All right, so that call, you blew it off. You didn't think you needed it. And then a year later, you get the call again. And you realize there was a way to capitalize on this. You did need it. In fact, it got you out. In fact, it propelled you to a next level, different scenario, completely gave you it's not a, when they talk about business, they talk about vertical and horizontal, right? Can I grow my business up or can I spread it out like a tree and have different branches of the business? Your business went a different direction, took you to a different place. I see that all the time in my life. And I am grateful for the things like health, because when you're sick, all you're thinking about is getting healthy.
Yep.
Right. And when you're healthy, you think about 50 other things, making money, career, children, but health is number one. It's always priority. And to make sure you don't take shit for granted, to make sure you don't take even a one individual phone call from some lady out of the blue, you can't take that for granted. You can't. Anything that comes into your life, this podcast, by the way, which you almost said you didn't want to do. You did. You rejected this podcast over the phone.
It's because it didn't pay enough.
You rejected it. Face it, 3 or 4 times. And I was like, he's going to do it because I'm going to make him fucking do it. And I knew you were going to do it. And I realized you probably talked to your wife and she probably said, go do it, right? She's like, go have some fun.
No, I didn't let her know about it because
this is not a normal thing for, contractors to get in front of cameras and podcasts. But the thing is, I don't know where this is going to go either, Randy. This could be like the phone call. I had my own share of those types of, I don't know where this shit's going, right? But I do it anyway because I know from experience, from all the things I've gone through that have panned out because of something I was going to say no to. My life is always better when I say yes. I say yes to everything now. I've been saying yes to everything for a long time. Sometimes I end up in a situation where I don't want to be, but the other stuff that I've gained has outweighed the shit over and over and over.
Yeah. Well, in fact, actually, once I accepted the fact that I was going to do this podcast, and I knew that you would really, really build my business if I went ahead and ordered 3 more trucks. So
not about your business.
You better hope right. This is dinging out for us here, Carmen.
And this is what I'm saying is that you don't know what it's going to do. It's probably not for sure. It's not going to help your business. I know that. This ain't going to help your business at all.
Really?
No, fuck no.
Do I got to pay for the shrimp? Do I got to pay for the shrimp?
You're already.
I ain't even wear my good shirt, man.
First of all, the reason that it's not, it
I
might.
I won't wear it all.
I should rephrase that. I don't think you care if this podcast helps your business because number one, you're doing well. You don't need it, right? This is just extra. What I think is that the things that you think might come from something, it's like almost like I this might be a little morbid, but when people talk about death and how they're going to die, how they want to die, it's not the way you think you're going to die. If you ever thought about the way you're going to die, that's not the way you're going to die. It's not the way. You
think deep.
Oh
man.
shit! You get into some of these other podcasts that we do, Randy, just about comedy. We are way deep. You have to when you're stand up. All it is thinking. You talk about your son had the gift of gab, right? And he has probably an analytical mind also, where he observes and he thinks about these things a little deeper than probably the way you think of things.
Well, that and with more schooling I did too.
It's not schooling,
which helped.
It is not schooling.
Well, no, as far as and I will say it's helped him out in a lot of ways. Just administratively.
It's the brain. some people's brains are present moment only. I have a lot of friends that don't give a shit about yesterday or tomorrow. It's right now.
I do that.
That's you, right? Yeah. Me, I will dwell. I will dwell on the future. I will dwell on the past, and I will analyze the shit out of it until it torments the fuck out of me. So that's a different brain than yours. Yeah. My brain, and that's why comedy works for me, because I can take something that's very mundane to you and make it ridiculously blown out of proportion.
Yeah, I know. We took your continuing education classes.
Well, who the hell can make safety and code funny? Only
you do a good job there, no doubt.
I appreciate it, but I'm saying that's the worst case scenario, right? To have a boring topic that no one wants to talk about and make it funny. Making humanity funny is way better. That's why I like safety. Safety for me is all humanity. It's all based on people, because that's what we're trying to protect, is the person. You know, it has all to do with the psychology of how you believe. Am I a superhero? I don't need to be tied off. If I do shoot a nail through my hand, who gives a shit? I'm stronger than most people. I've been in this situation. Your mind is what affects.
You want a job?
Because
you're my kind of guy.
I know better.
That's how I roll.
I know better about me being on the job now, because now I think about things because of the safety discussions too much. I told you, I'll let it fucking torment me. Anywhere I go now, I see safety hazards. Anywhere I go. You know, I'm looking at a piece of pipe coming, like a piece of rebar sticking up out of the ground at one of the kids' parks the other day. I was like, no one's capped this, no one's marked this, no one's sprayed this, no one's alert. A kid plays football over here, he lands on the ground, it's going right through him. That's all I think about in terms of safety. Now, what's the dangerous situations? It's not great for marriage either, because I'm always trying to direct my wife of how not to get hurt. It's the messenger, right? That's the safety guy that everybody hates.
Yeah.
But the idea is that my brain thinks deeper, and I think that it is something that it's just the way I always was. Maybe it's based on my childhood, observing how to get better, observing how to get out of my situation. How do I get out of this house that I live in? How do I get out of this neighborhood that we live in? How do I get better?
Maybe your mother coddled you too much.
She wasn't around.
Maybe she didn't coddle you enough.
That's right. We can get super deep into that, because coddling is my favorite thing.
How did I get that flipped over in a hurry?
You nailed it. You nailed it, man. I mean,
I've known you a long time, man.
I gotta be held. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
By the right person, though. If you hold me and it's you, the whole time I'm like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, when's he gonna let go of me? Why is he holding on to me?
You're a good hold.
Yeah, I think that is the part of this podcast has a lot to do with it. That's why I said, you know what? I've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time. I did construction comedy for a long time. Continuate education comedy for a long time. I know so many, not just construction, but people in the blue collar world that I relate to, that this is a thing that I like to discuss. Those people's lives. Other life, and in self-employment too, I think is another big thing. You know, the self-employed person comes into this a lot, because that's what I saw. I was raised around this self-employed uncle that was blowing everybody else away and not working as much. You talk about stress involved in your business. You had a lot of players.
Oh yeah.
You had a lot of players and a lot of clients. You know, I think my uncle realized that too when he was in Lath. You know, before drywall. Donnie probably doesn't even know what the hell lath is, do you?
No, never heard of it.
Lath is like plaster. And they didn't have sheets of drywall. They would just put up this lath over some type of wire.
They put that metal screening
and he was good at it.
Hooked to it.
I never saw him do it. That was the story. But by the time I was old enough, he was building homes, full-blown homes, and he had a crew. But he never was on the job anymore. He didn't go on to the job anymore. He drove around to the jobs. He rolled down the window of his Lincoln.
See, I don't do that.
He got rid of hands-on. He stopped doing hands-on.
I've always been hands-on.
Well, that's where I see the difference too, right?
Yeah.
The difference between, and that's because that's the lifestyle that you probably like.
Yeah, I've always been hands-on because
perfectionist.
no, not a perfectionist. I just got to be doing something. When I pull up on a job and I got a bunch of guys standing around, I'm like, let me in here, let me work. And I can get it done quicker and faster. I've had so many people through the years say, you know, like if I pulled up on a job and they got a 6-foot hole, they're trying to make a sewer tap, and they're in 3 foot of water, I'd be the first one to bounce down in there. And I've had people say, you know, you got other big name companies I won't mention. These guys, all they ever wore was a tie, a suit, and whatnot, you know, and they played these positions, and they would say, you know, I could never imagine that guy I used to work for hopping out of his truck and jumping down in this nasty hole. And that was something that even today I take and do.
You take pride into that.
Oh, I do. I've always taken a lot of pride into my work.
But you have to do it in front of other people because you're a show off.
Well, that could be. And well, you know what? Telling them don't seem to help, you know? So I went to, like, maybe I'll show them. Like, I just got rid of a couple guys that were working for me. The place was a mess. I've been on a 3-day run or 3-week run with no days off. I took off this past Saturday. I got re-energized. I woke up on Sunday at noon. I went to my office and I opened that trailer up and I said, this thing is a mess. I started at 5 that evening. I didn't get home till almost midnight on Sunday because I had to clean that trailer up. Thinking that these new guys I got coming in, maybe they'll take a look and say, you know,
yeah,
keep it this way. And, you know, I'm not scared of work by any means, never have been.
Right.
And in the past, I used to tell somebody if they would, an employee give me, you know, some feedback that was negative, I'd say, you know what? I don't need you. I started this business by myself and I can finish it. Well, I'm not in the same youth that I was then.
Right.
And it's kind of scary because I can't really say that now. I really have to depend on these people in my age. You know, I'm here with a bad rotocuff that I should have had operated on 5 years ago and whatnot. So I wish I was 20 years younger in this industry.
Do you think that you always did need to depend on them?
What's that now?
You said now you need to depend on them because you're older.
Well,
But do you think that you always did need to depend on those people?
Well, yeah, I had to depend on it to a certain degree
But
because
you
I had so
didn't
much
really
work.
let yourself understand that? Because I think that's true, right? That we say, well, we can do it. But the reason businesses grow is because the employees that we have, people that work for us, and I don't have a lot of employees. I have no employees. I always had.
Not a bad deal.
It's just comedy. I don't want to be a boss. I never wanted that, right? I just wanted to entertain. It's a weird thing. It's hard to explain to people who have structure. Comedy has no structure. It's just you're hoping.
Well, plumbing's the same way. I mean,
I don't think so. There's toilets in every house. There's not a stage in every
well,
home.
that was
There's
back to
there's
what my
not
dad
a
was
necessity.
saying. You know, everybody's going to need plumbing, so that's why I finally.
But you have to
fell back into
understand that the people you say you didn't need when you were younger because you were healthier, you did need them. I think you needed them.
Well, yeah, I was doing 250 homes back then a year.
Of course. And the reason you excelled so much, you did know how to manage them. Those people are hard to manage, yes. Anyone's hard to manage. I don't know how people do it, by the way. But you did it. You managed those people. You needed them to build your business to the certain point that you're at. That's why you're where you're at. So the whole thing, I think for younger people to understand, because this is really, you know, when I think about stuff now, I'm getting old too. What do I really need after this? So what should I be doing? Should I continue to try to attain shit for myself? Or should I try to spread the word to other people who don't have anything or are just starting off or just have very little? Here's some things that you should probably consider. And it's good for you too. See, this pod's going to be good for you, man.
Shoot.
I knew it.
I'm all ears.
I knew it. I knew this was going to help you. This is going to make you give
That's why I
back to
showed
the,
up,
you're
man.
giving back to the community by speaking truthfully about how you got successful. Because there's a bunch of people out there, Randy, that don't know how to do it. And I don't think you want the world to go to hell. I don't want it to go to hell, even if I'm not here. Because I have, even if I didn't have kids, I am very grateful for how the world has turned out for me. I used to say it as a kid, even before I understood what I meant. I was like, wow, we got fucking street lights and streets. You know, when I was riding my bike as a kid, I'm like, how did someone's paying for this shit? It's great that they did this for us, that we have this, that we have side. And I was like, in a way, excited as a kid for the taxes people had paid in the 50s. or the 40s and the world that they left for us to now enjoy, not thinking at that time that I was going to be that guy also, that I was going to eventually pay taxes and all this shit. But I was enjoying it. I was present day in the moment. Mm-hmm. That was a time when I wasn't analytical and tormented with the future and the past and the thoughts. Not all that shit was built up yet. But as a kid, I really did appreciate what people had, and I didn't know who these people were. I couldn't shake their hands. I didn't know who to thank. Yep. I just was very happy that there was a fucking street that I could ride my bike on, and that there was a store I could go into and buy stuff. I just understood at that time, very young, somebody laid out their labor for all this shit, and I get to enjoy it. So now, at this point, I don't need anything from the store. I don't ride my bike on the street. I do appreciate all the shit that we have. Still, I appreciate all of it. But I also think I want it to continue. And I want people who have not made it to make it. I try to help young comics. And I see their hard heads. And I see what the mistakes they make. And I could easily say, well, stupid fucking idiot. I'm not helping it. This kid. I don't do that. I stop myself and I go, you were that asshole too at one point. Yeah, at one point you were. I should stop swearing because Podbean's already said that we can't put any ads on our podcast because it's an explicit podcast because I'm swearing. I got to stop swearing.
We're like 70 minutes into it. You telling me you can't swear now?
I know.
Anyway, so this isn't a take? I've wasted my whole afternoon.
No, this is going up. This is going up. But what I'm saying to you is, isn't that amazing that now you're in a position, if you think about it, right? Because you got, even if it's beyond your own family and your grandkids, that we could help people to make the world better just by telling our story.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because with this particular division of my business that I'm running, I brought some youthful guys in, experienced at it, trying to get them to take this thing over. They just have no work ethic. It's just unbelievable. They need help. I actually let them run with it for about 5 months.
That's a lot.
And I came back, and there was no work on the board or anything else. And I'm like, what's up? And I knew I had an issue, but I didn't know what the problem was, so I couldn't point the finger.
Yeah.
Quickly, I got back out on the streets, and in no time, we're a month and a half out. It shocks me that the youth today, they're all about a 3-day work week and whatnot. It was like another guy had worked for me, a good kid, and he had left me, and I heard he'd taken and opened up a business. Well, at one point, I was thinking about closing this down. I called him up. I said, Jordan, I said, I got a deal for you, man. I said, you're opening a business. I said, this one's established. I'm getting out. Well, in the conversation, it sounded like maybe he wanted to come back and maybe get it going. And he led me to believe, oh, man, I'm a different guy. I'm this, that, and everything. And then when it came down to it, Michael met with the two of us. Yeah. Right away, I told Michael, this guy's changed, man. I said, oh, man, he's gold, man. He's go, 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 go. And right out of the kid's mouth, I only want to work 3 days. And my kids looking at me.
Think about this for 1 second. I know where you're going with this. And this is going to be hard because it's going to be a different way of trying to change your perspective, right? Just want you to try this. Do you want a 3-day work week?
No.
For you?
No, I want out completely.
You want, okay, right. So you don't want to work at all?
No, I do. I could never not go.
Hang on now, but don't think too deeply here. I know why these kids want a 3-day work. I know why they want a 3-day work week. I know why they don't want to work at all, by the way. And if you were raised with money, with stuff, without struggle, if you were raised just having fun, and then you were told you have to go work, right? I never viewed work as fun. I hate to tell you that.
I used to.
I did with my cousins, and we had a good time. You know, there was a lot of stuff that was great about working with these guys. And I understand pride in work. I get all that stuff. I'm not talking about that so much. I'm saying the peak of your life when you're young and healthy and everything is very hopeful and it's new. It's all when you're young. Your eyes are the biggest when you're a kid. And then someone says, you know, you're going to have to, even the most simplest thing, you're going to have to go out there and water sod all day. Just fucking hold a hose over this sod and soak it. Mm-hmm. And there's 10 acres of this shit that you got to do every day. It's like, all you're doing is you're thinking the whole time. I could be having a good time. I just met this girl. There's a party. I didn't live even around a beach. I was in Cleveland, Iowa. I mean, it was just the idea of being able to go have a better time. That's where they're at today. See, there's a lot of kids that grew up in a very stressful time, which was the 70s. Today, and I don't think people understand this because this is just human nature. There's so much, they've had so much, they don't realize what little is. They don't realize what little is. And they don't even realize what work is, some of these guys. You know, that it's so hard to start from a very bad spot when you're broke, when you're poor. But if you are like even just a middle class family that didn't struggle, family stayed together and you're okay, and you've always had a good time, and now you're in this world today with the iPhones, with the influences of what's going on in the world, with the politics that are going on in this world, where people are being told culturally, marketing wise, that you could have it all and shouldn't have to do anything else, and the different agendas of multiple people, and trying to grow up with all that and trying to clear a path for you and realize what is right. You might not want to work more than 3 days. And if someone says to you, I'm going to let you work only 3 days, eventually that kid's coming back and saying to you, I only want to work 1 day. And then when he gets the 1 day of work and he's still making the same amount of money that he did in 3 days, that he used to make in 7 days, but now he makes it in 1 day, he's eventually going to come to say to you, I don't want to work at all, and I still want that money.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening, is that we have trained, I don't know who did, I'm not saying we, because I don't know the dark forces, Randy.
All right.
I've watched a lot of sci-fi lately, so I know there's dark forces out there. But the way that a lot of these kids who even have parents who try to explain to them what the reality is, they're still thinking that what you're asking of them is too much. 3 days of work is too much. Expecting them to be always on time is too much. Expecting a hierarchy where you're the boss and they're just the worker is too much.
You've hit all of them.
Yes, and I could see why it happens is because we're living in such a fruitful society. I was happy for streets and lights and sidewalks and to be able to ride my bike. No, there's a much higher level of what people feel is base level living, which includes the iPhone, computers, technology.
The iPhone's the worst thing ever happened to an employer.
Internet. But I'm just saying, whatever it is, like I had a TV that influenced me, and I guarantee you that my uncles who didn't have as much TV as I did when they were young in the 50s said to me, you know, you have too much with watching, and this is probably the worst thing that ever happened to youth in the 70s and 80s, and probably I guarantee you it's true. You ever watch Cable Boy with what's the guy's name? The comedian?
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, where he's grown up by television. The names he uses for himself are television names. It's because he was so wrapped up in TV. And a lot of his movies, actually, The Truman Show, those movies are based on television influencing children. We're influential. So the kid that you're dealing with now, you don't know what his influences are. You don't know how he got wired to where he's at, but he sure as shit didn't go through the same training you did.
No, well, I think a lot of the problems is today you got so many people out there that are making money doing nothing. You know, like this YouTube. It's unbelievable the money that these.
You think they're doing nothing?
Huh?
Do you think they're doing nothing?
I think they're doing nothing. They're not providing anything.
Well, that's another problem that we got, is that they are doing something, and that the people who do something physically don't understand that the people who they believe are doing nothing are actually doing something. They are doing something. Not every one of them, But a good chunk of them have replaced Time Magazine, have replaced Sarasota Herald Tribune, have replaced the New York Times, have replaced NBC, have replaced mainstream media, and now have created channels where people are advertising. It's not for their own benefit. YouTube would never let them do this if YouTube didn't make any money.
Right.
So they are doing something because they're influencing you, possibly, or your son or your grandson, to go get a MetaQuest headset for virtual reality gaming, or to buy deodorant, or to, again, buy beer. It's the same game. It's just different media levels. They are doing something. They all want to do it, maybe. They would love to have that life, just like me in the 80s watching comedians on TV and going, just like the MTV song, Money for Nothing. Remember the song Money for Nothing? It's a song about guys who are moving refrigerators that want to be in a band because they think the band's doing nothing. And then the band, what the fuck is that band's name?
Eddie Money, wasn't it?
No. Money for Nothing was written by, God, I can't think. We don't care about facts in this room, do we?
Well, this isn't.
This is a true fact. This is a true fact that we need. Money for Nothing was written by a band beginning with the letter D. Dire Straits. Dire Straits sang that song as an ironic song about people who said that people who were in bands did nothing. We're moving fucking refrigerators over here. We're working physically. You're doing shit with your long hair and your guitars. Same argument. Same argument. But the band actually does something because, Randy, you couldn't survive. Maybe not you, but most people couldn't survive without fucking comedy, without bands, without music, without entertainment.
Oh, I gotta have music.
You gotta have something. Someone's got to produce it, Randy. Mm-hmm. Someone's got to take on that job.
Yeah, but not every. I mean, this country.
You don't know who it's gonna be.
But this country's not producing nothing anymore.
We are.
They're selling time is all they're doing.
You know what we're producing? Entrepreneurs. We have produced some of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world. So good that we were able to take processes away from the United States of America, ship them. Not that it's right, but that's how the entrepreneur made more money. How do I make more money as a guy that owns an auto company? I ain't gonna fucking pay these auto workers what they want. I'm gonna ship it to some slave country and force people who are not getting enough to survive in their own country, which is a third world country. They still can't even live in a decent home, making a car to sell back for this entrepreneur in this country. So that guy benefits, but does the worker underneath him in America benefit? So when you say people don't produce nothing, it's not their fault. It's not anyone's fault. It is a system of capitalism that we've all agreed that, hey, capitalism is pretty good, supply demand. But when you start messing with the definitions of labor and trade and tariffs and product, it gets way complicated than just saying we don't produce nothing. We do produce something, and we would have continued to produce something, but there were forces behind, again, dark forces, Randy, dark forces of people that for some reason can't get thrown out into the light, who manipulate the system, and someone's going to get hurt. Someone's getting hurt, and there's a lot of people who are benefiting from that. By the way, construction is not one of these things yet. Construction, you cannot ship those jobs to China, right? You can't ship them to Mexico. You can.
But they're bringing Mexico to the jobs. And that's what I'm seeing is happening to the construction industry because nobody wants to work anymore. It goes back to what I'm saying. They don't.
It's not that nobody
you're not
wants
producing
to work.
Something. Yeah, it is, Carmen.
I think people do want to work because
I totally disagree.
Everybody wants to do something. I think that you may be saying they don't want to work in your business. Your business is hard, right? It's a hard business. It's a hard business. It's not an easy business, right? I agree that people don't want to work too hard if they don't have to, but I still believe that there's people who I just never appreciated as much as I did later on the construction industry. When I was doing it, when I was involved in it, I just wanted to get the job done so I can go out and drink, so I could get a limo, so I could go do a reverse raffle, so I could hang out with my cousins, so we could go hit the bars. I needed a means to the end. Now later on, after you get married, you have kids, and you go, oh, this is an important job, by the way, building someone's home. This is a very meaningful career but again, entrepreneurship and capitalism kind of gets in the way, because what you see now is you see the houses that get thrown up as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible, so we can make bottom line profit versus I care about who's living here. Do they really care about who's living here?
No, they don't. It's all went to nationwide builders. It's all about numbers. They're not contractors. They are numbers people that are building, and they put all these mom and pops out of business in the process.
Yes, and when you have that attitude, and people know this, Randy, right? They know this. How much caring is being taught to humanity about the idea of pride and ownership or pride in work. And part of that is what detracts from wanting to work. And kids now want to work for companies they believe in, which has been going on for a long time. They don't want to work for tobacco or alcohol or Hooters or Harley. They want to work for something that's going to help people in general. Animals for sure. They love animals. But they also want to help people in general. So you see people working in the environmentally conscious areas of the world, and companies have to adapt to that to get those employees. You could easily, like I used to say, there was a guy in class that was selling his business. I don't think he was selling it to the public. He was selling it to his workers to get more workers. He was calling himself some type of friendly environmental name and then also giving a portion of his profit to charities because he knew people would work for that company. They would take pride in working for this company because this guy was doing something bigger and they wanted to be part of something bigger. Now that's a stretch. It's a stretch because I know a lot of guys were doing what they call greenwashing, which was acting as if they were involved in the environment. They took an attitude of, oh yeah, but they weren't. You know,
the whole green thing's
not the whole thing. Don't do it. Some of it's good, right?
Tell me what's good about it.
Clean air is good.
Clean air?
Of course. Clean water, you know about that. If we didn't have clean water, you're in the plumbing business. We got to have processes to make sure that water is clean.
And I'm not saying that's not the case.
That's green. That's green.
What I'm saying is...
You're talking about the marketing of the green.
Yeah, how much stuff that they pushed extra to sell under this green code environment.
That's all bullshit. For me, that kind of shit is, again, entrepreneurship. That's somebody, if you take a look at any of those, and I'm not going to name anyone specifically because this is not the idea of this pod. This pod is supposed to be fun.
Right.
We're having fun right now. But there's a lot of groups that knew they can make money off the green agenda.
Well, that's what I
So
mean.
if someone came to you, Randy, a phone call out of the blue, instead of jetting, some woman called you and said, hey, here's an idea. I'm going to name it Randy Mask Environmental Friendly Plumber. And it's going to raise you $300,000 a year. And you have to do nothing, Randy. Just follow this agenda. Ton of people will jump on board for that. And they're going to steer you toward the groups like LEED, Leadership for Energy and Environmental Design, or U.S. Green Building Council, all those different groups, right, that were benefiting from those agendas. Now, that has slowed down, by the way, because you're right. Once we put those processes into action, it's more than words. If the action did not produce what they said in the words, then no one believed anymore or wanted to put any more money into it. Now, I'm not saying those groups are not. Some of those groups are still active. And I believe in definitely, if you could recycle the water better in your own house so you don't have to pay an extra water bill. Like if you could take the water, the gray matter, the gray water, right? Mm-hmm. And recycle it and reuse it in your own home without getting it to the city, without having to go through filtration. That's pretty good. If I could save money doing it, but the systems cost more than the savings.
Oh, yeah, and the maintenance.
Solar would be an amazing thing. I am 100% solar if it worked. And I'm not talking about the giant. No. You're not listening. And you didn't listen in class either, by the way.
I didn't. That's why I dropped out. Actually, I dropped out and got thrown out. So.
I know. Well, here's the thing is that I'm not talking about giant solar panels on your house. I'm saying when technology gets to the point where somebody, an entrepreneur, this is why I like capitalism, by the way, because it does.
Oh, I'm not beating capitalism.
No, I believe in it, even though it has its downfalls, because eventually some inventor, we don't call them inventors anymore, some genius is going to come out with the panel that's going to be 50 times as absorbent or whatever the word is for taking the sun's energy and then making it into usable electricity. Someone's going to continue to make those panels more and more and more and more efficient, where it's not going to be a giant panel on your roof. It's going to be a little box in front of you.
You're probably
It's
right.
going to be a small little box in front of the house, and it's going to power the whole house. Because the idea of what the sun produces and what we don't use from this energy, what we let hit the house or radiate back off of or reflect or try to block from, all that energy could be harnessed.
And I get that.
That's what I'm saying. Those types of movements, how do you argue with that? Why is that not good? What's not good is when they start saying to you, you must do this, even if the technology is not there yet. But some of that's even good, Randy. Some of that's even good. Because if you don't force a little bit of it, when it doesn't work, we know it doesn't work, we got to pull the plug on it. You keep somebody in business too long with a solar company and you support it with the government and you allow it to continue and it fails, that's a big mistake. Big mistake. It's not ready. We're not
Failed
ready.
in the 80s here.
We're not ready yet. We weren't ready yet. We're getting close. But why are we getting close?
Elon.
That's one reason, but we're also getting close because we keep trying it. We keep experimenting. You can't shut it down, and the dialogue is shutting it down by the politics of it. Those people are picking sides and saying, well, you're not this type of person if you don't, fuck you.
Yeah. See, I've never been one that was a real conformist of the government and everything. I've always been kind of a...
You can't be. You can't be for the big government. Government has its role.
Yeah, I've always been more the rebel.
That's what I said about the blue-collar people who start off from the grassroots versus the people who are indoctrinated or went to school or influenced by people who were telling them what they saw. It's not even that anymore. You see it on the job as a contractor, or you go to a classroom and learn it from someone who's not even a contractor. It'd be great if the teachers were actually from the job site so they could give you firsthand knowledge. You're getting some guy who's never been on the job site, whose family may have never been in construction, teaching construction to you. So who's better? The guy in the job site?
On the job training, by all means.
I think a mixture of it.
Yeah.
A mixture. You have the on the job. You got to learn the blueprint because that's the most. What's the reason for the blueprint? It's for green building. No one talks about that. That construction is the number one green builder out there. The number one green industry is construction. Construction uses a blueprint for one reason, Randy, to prevent waste. That is specifics on how that building will be built with the exact right amount of materials. No waste. No excess trees were cut down because we had a blueprint to build this structure. That's why we use the blueprint. And the entrepreneur also does not want to waste one more dime. You know, when you lay on a floor and you put tile down and you got, how many more tiles left would aggravate you?
Oh, yeah.
If you had an excess.
You know, there were times
if you had 50 tiles left, you'd be like, someone fucked up on the measuring.
Yeah, you had to make sure that you had everything.
You ever see guys throw full sheets of drywall into a dumpster because it's the end of the job? And they order too much. And in the old days, they would just toss this shit into the dumpster, Randy. The blueprint it's a green document because it prevents waste.
If you say so.
It's exactly what it is. That's why they did it. Why did
I think.
Why is it? What do you think?
I think.
Why is it pipe?
You're like.
Why is the pipe 2 inches?
Pushing this green shit myself.
No, I never did. But see, that's what happens to me in class. People go, "Oh, you're for this." I go, "What are you, stupid? I'm not for anything. I'm for the efficiency of it because." Look at me. Look at my stomach right now. I have 10 extra pounds on me because I've not been efficient with my food, Randy. I haven't been green in my diet. I've been eating way too much.
So what you're telling me is Kelly needs to make a blueprint of you?
Blueprint of his diet.
Right. You did it. Oh my God, he did it. He agreed.
Wow. No, I didn't agree. I just asked.
No, you fucking gave the right answer.
This is how we get to.
Didn't he?
I don't think so. Now it's
Donnie?
Come on, this 2-on-1 ain't gonna
Donnie?
work.
Technically.
Quit interrupting Donnie.
No. Technically, you did describe what he needs. But it's all on
Technically,
Carmen.
I was describing what he said.
Yes, but it's on Carmen to follow it, which is Carmen just one of these employees who's throwing drywall in the dumpster.
Yeah, he's going to be 4 sheets of drywall in the dumpster.
No, I was going to finish it with, I am the guy who's not throwing the shit in the dumpster, unless you call my stomach the dumpster. Because that's exactly, instead of me portioning out with a blueprint of diet what I should be eating, I am eating excessively and putting too much into my system. It's like a house with an extra elevation on it that has no purpose. You understand? If you got me confused
where you're trying to get this green on this blueprint.
If you put
this blueprint been around forever.
If you put a toilet next to a toilet in a single family home, it's too much, right? It's waste. Why would someone put a toilet next to another toilet?
A loving couple.
A loving couple. Okay, what else?
I've done bathrooms like that. He wanted his pooper with a bidet seat, and she wanted something with a vibrating deal.
Oh my God! Wow, that's a little.
But now I'm going to say that's not your run-of-the-mill people. I mean,
but I'm saying if a normal, I'm not saying this ain't normal either. I might want to do this.
You're trying to rope me into this.
No, I'm just trying to say there's a reason why there's only one toilet in the bathroom. That's efficiency and economy. You don't need more than one toilet. Sometimes you have 2 bathrooms, which, by the way, you see in trends of home building over the years, right? You can look at this. There's a government from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that talks about the trend, the size of homes when they became 1,200 square feet, when they became 1,600 square feet, what the average size home was over the decades, right? Mm-hmm. So in Florida, typically you would see 1,500 square feet. You would see a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. You would see a carport. You'd see flat, they no air conditioning. So they knew all this, right? So very efficient, by the way, very green, also very environmentally friendly for the state of Florida because the roofs were flat, large overhangs, gravel built up, white rock reflecting the sun, keeping it cool, all with the idea of making sure that it was built within the right environment for Florida. So those things were happening. But also houses started becoming more than 1,800 square feet. Now people were buying and living in 3,600 square feet or 5,000 square feet for 2 fucking people.
Well, it's crazy. I was looking at houses
Is that green, Randy? Is that green? To have 2 people in a 5,000? No. Well, by definition, no.
Now, wait a minute. Now you're going in another direction because
it's all the same direction.
No, it's not. Those people are entitled to be able to do whatever they want if they got the money to do it.
Oh no!
Who are you to take and shut them down because you say it ain't green?
I didn't. No. You missed the whole point.
See, I think you're changing sides.
No, what I'm saying to you is it green? Not whether or not they have the right or the privilege to do that. Is it green? Is that a green way to live? 2 people in 5,000 square feet?
Green to me is complete bullshit.
Well, because you've been listening to the news. I'm talking about you as a person using efficiency in a way that we're talking about. Efficiency of why things are meant to not be wasted.
This green thing ain't as efficient as you're trying to make me believe it is.
I'm not talking about these solar companies.
Let's take, for example, here's the one thing that really gets me about green.
You live in a 5,000 square foot house, don't you?
No.
I'm saying yes.
And I did too. And I have no problem with people living in big homes. What I'm saying to you is our trends have changed in this country, that people lived in smaller homes, right? As we became wealthier in this country and had more money, disposable income, ability to buy bigger houses, we did that.
That's true.
Didn't mean it was efficient, though. Didn't mean it was efficient. It's not efficient. One of the reasons I just moved out of my house, because I'm an efficiency, I told you, deep thinker, ruminator about things. I go, we're wasting money here. It's costing me this amount of money every month to cool this friggin' place off. And it's just me and her. And we're only using these 2 rooms. Not very smart, efficiency-wise. That's what I'm saying.
How did you fix anything? Because you sold to somebody else that's doing the same thing that you was doing with it. So how does that make that right or wrong?
Because it's up to them. Like you said, everyone has the right to live wherever they want. For me, it didn't work. I have no problem.
Because you're a cheapskate. Pay the electric bill and move on.
Oh, it wasn't about that.
You're making the money.
I'm not a cheapskate. It's for me, it was also, I had a family in that house with 2 dogs, right? We not outgrew it. We what's it called? Disgrew it, ungrew it.
You needed the space, and then you didn't need the space.
There's a word for it. Disgrew. So we reduced the family. So yeah, of course. And by the way, the house went to somebody that's having a growing family. I didn't even require that, like you are trying to imply that I require someone that.
Well, you're
had
trying to
enough
build yourself
people.
up that you're the good guy, that you come over here because it's all green.
No.
And like that
Not
problem
at all.
ain't over, but all you do is just make one step away.
I am talking about, I know, even as I'm living in it, this is not the most efficient situation for me. And if you're a guy who, you have two people, you and your wife want to live in a 5,000, and you got the ability and you want to do it, hey, absolutely. I love looking at those houses. I don't want to take care of them no more. But my point is the definition of what people believe, what green means, what environmentally friendly means. Now, we're talking about this too much because it does heat up a lot of people.
Well, the green to me has only been introduced through plumbing codes.
Because you weren't thinking about it.
Well, I can say the codes that they made the changes on, it's like, really? It just created more work for me.
That's a different agenda, Randy, and I see why you're mad.
Really? You concluded all of that quickly?
Yes, because I agree with you. I've known this for a long time that even with the 1.6 gallon flush toilet, whatever, is it 1.6 or 1.5?
Yeah, now they want to make it 1.2.
Those don't work.
Well, they finally got them so they'll work. Now they're wanting to go to 1.2.
Do they really work?
The 1.6s?
Okay, so say it.
Eh,
They don't work. You've always said they don't work.
They do, they don't.
As soon as I said they work, you're like they don't work.
No.
I knew you'd go against me on purpose.
Here's the problem. Now, because now it's getting political, because you got a couple congressmen up there that's wanting to put their name on something. Oh, let's reduce it.
This is the hardest thing I have with most guys, especially in class, is to forget everything, try to clear your brain, start from scratch, and just answer the questions, right? What is green? How did they get there? And where they are now is where you're at, is the political stuff. I'm talking about the 1.6 gallon toilet. Doesn't work, Randy. Doesn't work. I got to flush it twice, right?
Exactly. What I'm saying is the government's wanting to reduce it even more.
That's
now.
way up. You're up here. I'm still down here at base level. I just wanted, because if me and you can't walk into this meeting together agreeing that this 1.6 does not properly flush, then we can't argue with these people. We have to first tell them it doesn't work. Now, do they care if it works? No. That's why we're not going to any meetings.
Tell you one of the good examples.
We're not going to fight them because that's something they've won. We have let them win this battle.
Here's a good example. The gas can. You see what the laws did in changing the gas can? You use a gas can.
Yeah.
You don't cut your grass and shit like I do.
But I know what you're talking about.
They are so unsafe now. Mm-hmm. Because of all the safety devices on it. I end up spilling more gas. It's more dangerous and everything else.
Right.
And yet, this is what our government, the same people that promoted all this green and everything else, they take, and in my opinion, like I say, I've always been the one to buck the system. I don't know why that is. It's just the rebel in me, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not a real trusting individual, especially when it comes to groups of people like that. I've always been kind of standoffish and, typically kind of think a little different than a lot of people do.
Absolutely.
But
by the way, everybody wants to be like you.
I don't know.
They're
about
afraid, Randy. Most people are afraid to give their opinion. They know what's right and what's wrong.
Well, that's one thing about me. I'll give you my opinion, RB.
And why would you?
It's not a good
why
thing.
would you risk it?
Risk what? Give my opinion?
Yeah. Why would you risk it?
I don't really care. I mean, that's the person I am.
But do you understand the consequences of it?
I've always dealt with the consequences of it.
If you gave your opinion on something that everyone else had the opposite opinion, there could be a consequence, right?
No. I just say, well, that's what y'all think, then go ahead and do it.
Yeah, but it's
But I'm
gonna
gonna do my thing
it's
the way I
gonna-
wanna do it.
What I'm saying is, in the reasoning of somebody disagreeing, okay, you go into, you want a government contract, and the government wants you to build this structure under LEED requirements, the Leadership for Energy and Environmental Design. You're competing with 4 other companies. You're one of the companies. You know your opinion on something is in disagreement, complete opposite of what the people who are choosing the contractors believe. The consequence is that you're not going to get that job if you disagree with their opinion. That's what I'm talking about. You're willing to give your opinion because you really don't care, but what does that really mean? Like if we're talking to a group of people and they say, what does that mean? Why does Randy care? Is it because Randy has enough work and he doesn't care about getting that job? That's a possibility. In fact, that's probably the reason.
The way I would take and handle that situation is I would tell them that I don't agree with it.
Right.
As a person in the industry this long, I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
But if this is what you guys want to do and go forward with it, so be it.
You would still do it.
But I'm telling you, you're going to run into issues down the road.
Yeah.
And usually they do, but not always. I mean, I don't.
Have you ever lost a job because of your opinion?
Possibly. Might have been my personality. See, I'm like Dave's rug anymore, you know? It's just.
You're what?
I'm like Dave's rug. I just got one card and I don't really want to use it.
Dave's rug.
Dave's rug. You never heard the commercial Dave's rug?
No.
The telephone commercial? I've only got one rug to sell. I've only got one business card.
I think I think I just watched a comedy about something like that. It was trailers. Very funny. I'll have to dig that up, but I see what you're saying. So
what I'm saying is that I'm in a position I can pick and choose up to a certain point.
Yeah, and we call that something.
What do we call that?
Fuck you money.
Yeah, pretty much. Done that to you. You know, that's. I got into. Here's a prime example. Last week I had this lady. The whole restaurant stopped up. And all they're worried about is the floor drain in the bathroom because her husband stuck her hand down there and got sand out of it. It was because the system hadn't been maintained. They had the kitchen has a grease system, which is a separate system that has to go through a grease trap before it comes back into the sanitary. Then the bathrooms are on a sanitary system. Everything was stopped up. I opened the grease trap. The grease trap hasn't been maintained in 2 years. It's just solid grease. There's your problem.
Right.
Clean it. I get the line opened up, and they keep insisting they got a problem with this P-trap. Well, I mean, I don't know if you know much about P-traps. They hold a water level. If there was a problem with the P-trap, the water level would have dropped. You can look at it and see in the floor drain, it's holding water. They're insistent that it's there. Finally, I got so aggravated with them, I said, fine. $900, I'll go bust the floor up, I'll pull that P-trap out, and I'll hand it to you to look at if that's what you want me to do. But you may as well take that $900 and throw it out the window.
Yeah.
That's what I told the lady. I mean,
you knew.
There's no sense. I'm not one that tries to sell things I don't have to sell, you know, and that's probably one of the reasons that I do have a pretty good reputation because I do have a conscience, and I always followed the fact that, you know, I don't appreciate somebody going up my grandmother's house and putting a garbage disposal in there for her and charging her $500.
Yeah.
You know, that and it's so much of it goes on, and you know that.
Yeah.
And it's just probably kicking us away from the topic we were talking about. But, you know, for that reason, I've always tried to be as honest as I can, whether they want to hear it or not.
Yeah.
And you're possibly right. You know, I'm sure there's times I'm sensing, well, it probably wouldn't be the best thing. But in a lot of times, I went ahead and said it anyways.
It's okay at some level is what I'm saying, too, is that's the purpose of being successful because you're not heard when you're young, you're not heard. When you're broke, you're not heard. When you have any power, you're not heard. It's only when you start getting this position, right? Whatever it is, whether it's a financial position, a power position, then people start listening to you. Well, you have a lot to say, right? A lot of people have a lot to say.
Yeah.
And you want to say it, and you've been held back for a long time. And at some point, you're now going to be asked, and you're going to say it. That's the beauty of becoming successful. The problem with a lot of things is that a lot of people fear that if they do say what they actually been holding in or wanted to say or never got a chance to say, they might lose everything because of it. That is a big problem. And I don't like that because I like to hear people's opinions. I want to know the truth from someone. I don't like the...
That's what I always try to speak. And a lot of times it's like, I'm my own worst enemy because of it.
Yeah, but how, though? Not to you. You might lose a job. You might not get where you wanted to go, but did you really want to go with them? A lot of times when something like this has ever happened to me, and it happens to comedy all the time. In comedies all the time. Keep your mouth shut. No matter what happens, even if it's your fault, even if it's their fault, and it's so heinous against you, you better suck it up. If you want to continue, not just in this one vein of this business, if you want to continue in the business itself.
No, you're right.
There's a lot of people who don't say anything. And I'm not good with that either. I lost a lot of jobs. I never got where I was hoping to go because once I found out who was running the system, it's a system. The only way for me to get successful was to create my own system, which I did that. I created my own system. The only problem with that is that none of those other people that you want to be associated with or in that peer group or creating with or that's gone for you now. It's like starting another business away from a business that you want to be with. Like if someone really wanted to be with your plumbing company and work with your group and work with your clients and they just couldn't get in with you or they didn't like the boss or one of the managers and they started their own business, it's done. They can never go back to Randy Mask Plumbing.
Right.
They're going to be on their own now. Might actually even work out that they do well, but their original intent was to work in a different system or a different company. Sometimes it doesn't work, and a lot of the times this is because people will express an opinion that they believe is right, and I think everyone's been trained now in the last few years to not say much, and there was a lot of silent people out there. It affected the world so much that you might have a bunch of people now who are going to work for you. You might never know their real reasons on anything. They want to keep what they got. They want to keep what they got. They don't want to lose it. So for you to have a good opinion, for you to have a strong opinion, that to me is what actually attracts me to, I should not just say construction, but the blue collar industry, because there's too much logic involved in physical activity that you have to say to somebody, like you said, this is the problem. This is why it doesn't work. In other businesses, it's all theoretical. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're talking about being in a business, even science should be logic, but we found out that a lot of people didn't want to follow the logic of science during COVID. We saw all that. Comedy's just entertainment. Bands are just, I know a lot of funny people, way funnier than me. Super funny people that have never achieved what they wanted to achieve, or they should be where they want to be. Because you have to have more than just being funny. You have to be in agreeance and go along and not argue and keep your opinion to yourself. So there's a lot of people who don't get to express opinions. But blue collar people, when it comes down to it, a flat's a flat. A stuffed pipe's a stuffed pipe. An electrical outlet that doesn't produce electricity is exactly that. Nothing else. There's no other way to call it. And once you get that in your brain, once you're that kind of person where you say, this is that, and I know it 100%, when you know something 100%, when you're that confident, which I think working physically gives you.
Oh, yeah, well, experience and whatnot.
But it gives you 100% confidence that you bring that confidence to other realms of your life. So don't ever change, Randy. I'm
not going to change. I mean,
let them say what they want to say
really
to you.
Hard to change me.
And let the young people understand this also. Keep your opinion too. Keep it. Just, again, the consequence of saying to a man, I only want to work a 3-day work week. He had big confidence to say that to you. But the consequence of it is you might get fired. You might not get this job. And he's going to learn that way. That's how people learn. Because ultimately, yes, we'd love not to work at all. some of us. We'd love to fuck around, especially when we're young. And then we would love to not have such a hard job and make our life a little easier. And ultimately, maybe only work a 3-day work week. But the facts are, someone's got to work. Someone's got to do the job. And someone's got to earn the money. So until that day, until the day where you could say, I'm done working 5 days or 7 days, when you're successful, like someone like you who says, I don't even have to work now, that was earned.
I don't, but I do.
Try to grab it when it's not earned yet. All right, we got to go.
Well, that's why I'm not getting out of it.
It's almost 2 hours now.
Yeah. We
did a hell of a job here.
I appreciate it.
Randy, okay. I knew you were going to be able to talk way more than you. I knew this was a perfect outlet for you because you like to talk. You're personable. I knew this. I've been thinking about this with you, that you got a lot of insight on the business. And podcast is a good format because you get to talk forever about this. Now, we get people who only listen for 10 minutes, so your words will go nowhere. But anyway,
okay. Time well spent. Is that what you're telling me there, Carmen?
It actually will be chopped up. It will chop it up. I don't want to. I know logically that's not a good thing to say to you. I hope this is our best podcast, everyone, because we had one of the top plumbers in at least Sarasota. I don't know. There's no plumbing competition. I always wanted the Contractor X Games. That would have been a very good thing to have, like a competition between plumbers from all over the country. You get your crew from Sarasota versus a crew in Missouri. And
that would be interesting.
I would love to see that happen. But I do appreciate you coming, Randy. Randy Mask, plumbing, second guest. That's it for the construction podcast. This is a up and coming thing. You're in the beginning of this.
Well, I want to say thank you so very much for inviting me over here and
absolutely
let me eat that big fancy lunch. I was good and whatnot.
We'll get you some food
give
after
me a little
this.
ditty bag on the way out, so now it's all good.
All right. We'll see you later.
Have a good day.